The Pittsburgh Steelers have signed an absolute massive human being to their roster at the offensive guard position. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've claimed offensive lineman Tykeem Doss off of waivers from the Ravens. An absolute mauler, an absolute wrecking ball. Someone who stands at 6'5", 378 pounds. So before I get more into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates. Also, like this video. Now, let's get right back into it. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they claimed Tykeem Doss off of waivers after the Baltimore Ravens have released him. And this is because the Steelers had an open roster spot because they waived an injured cornerback in Kalen Barnes. So, they made a move to fill their roster back up. And they landed Tykeem Doss. And this is an amazing pickup just from the standpoint of how big he is, how big of a mauler he is, and how big of a human wrecking ball he could be. So Doss, he was an undrafted free agent out of Southern Mississippi in the 2023 NFL Draft. Doss measured in at 6'5", 378 pounds, coming out of Southern Miss, recording 35-inch arms, 10 1/8 inch hands, and 85 1/2 inch wingspan. So usually when you see a player this big, it's as an offensive tackle. For whatever reason, it's usually the offense tackles who stand at like 6'8", 6'7", and weigh this much. Even though they go against smaller players because they go against edge rushers, and the inside offense linemen should be bigger because they go against actual like full defense linemen, defense tackles, 300 plus guys. So you would think that maybe the inside offense line would be bigger. Usually it's the offensive tackles. Well, in this case, it's the opposite because Doss, he is an offensive guard and he's a huge player. And he is a really strong player as well because at his pro day with the Golden Eagles or former Golden Eagles product, he recorded 28 reps on the bench at his pro day and added a 24-inch vertical and 8 3-inch broad jump while clocking it at 5.54 40-yard dash time. You don't expect him to be fast, but 5.54, that's a 40-yard dash time. And an 8.19 cone drill kind of time. Doss, at the NFL level, he hasn't had much experience. He's really only played in preseason games for the Ravens, which was last season. He played 35 snaps at left tackle. Even though he is an offensive guard, he's listed as offensive guard. He came from college where he played offensive guard. He played 35 snaps at left tackle, and he was a better run blocker than he was as a pass blocker, as you would expect because of his size. And someone at that size maybe has less mobility, so he's better at run blocking than he is pass blocking, and his PFF grade from those games, from those snaps, sure match that. So he comes in to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you're not expecting him to make this final roster. That's not what you're expecting, but I'm still going to make this video kind of introducing you to him because he is a massive human being, and this is a really good signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers because maybe it's just someone you could have to the practice squad or someone you could have down the road if an injury happens, he comes up to the main roster, elevated, something like that. So it kind of gives you the background information you need to know on him just in case if he does make an appearance in a game or does make an appearance on the actual main roster. Then you kind of know his background and everything like that. So moving forward, you look at Doss and his time in college. You look at his playing time. He played 31 games for Southern Mississippi. He started 6 games at left guard in 2020 and 3 games at left tackle in 2021. He played in all 11 games in 2022. So you look at that and he has played a decent amount of college time. It's still not that much experience from the NFL level or the college level, but he comes in with the Steelers with at least a good base that he is a strong, massive mauler of a human being, and the Pittsburgh Steelers need that. So hopefully he can make an impact on this team, whatever he ends up doing, practice squad or main roster. Also, one last thing on Doss. He comes in super late into basically the second week of the preseason. No more training camp left, no more open public training camp. There's still obviously practice and things like that. So he's going to have a hard time making this roster, practice squad and all. but at least it gives him a chance to kind of show out, show what he could do, and have some film in the preseason when he gets in there with what maybe the third team in this next preseason game against the Bills, and at least shows and maybe the film for other teams looking to sign a player. And if he shows out enough, maybe he does make this practice squad, or maybe he does make a final roster of someone else's team. So at least gives him a chance to have something on film. Now, let's move over to the next signing the Pittsburgh Steelers have made and just go over the transactions within the last few days. Because the Pittsburgh Steelers have signed defensive back Zion Gilbert and wide receiver TJ Luther. And also today, they signed defensive back Keandre Thomas. So let's start with him. Thomas originally signed with the Cleveland Browns as an undrafted free agent following the 2021 NFL Draft. He spent time on the Green Bay Packers practice squad as well as with the Carolina Panthers. Thomas played college football at Kansas State in 2020 after transferring from Minnesota. While at Kansas State, he appeared in 8 games, recording 27 tackles, 20 solo stops, and 4 pass defense. So, in the correlation to this move, the Pittsburgh Steelers have placed defensive back Grayland Arnold on the reserve/injured list. So, looking at the moves they made yesterday, they signed 2 players as well. The Steelers signed Zion Gilbert. So let's start with him. Gilbert originally signed with the New York Giants as an undrafted free agent following the 2022 NFL Draft, where he spent time on the kind of New York Giants practice squad and active roster as a game day elevation, where he recorded actually 10 tackles and a sack in that game. So Gilbert was signed to the Green Bay Packers practice squad in 2023. Looking at his college days, however, Gilbert played college football at Florida Atlantic, where he appeared in 60 games. He finished with 248 total tackles, 158 solo stops, 31 pass defense, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, and 1 interception. So this is a good production for him at the college level, and he has some experience there. So hopefully that translates to the next level eventually. Now, looking at the other signing, Luther, the wide receiver. He was originally signed by the New York Jets as an undrafted free agent following the 2023 NFL Draft, where he signed with the New England Patriots last season and also spent the majority of the year on their practice squad. Looking at his college days, he played college football at Gardner-Webb, where he appeared in 19 games over 2 seasons, and he finished with 78 receptions for 1,419 yards and 11 touchdowns. So having that production over 19 games is actually a lot. Having that production with only 78 receptions is amazing. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's what they did. And just looking at the corresponding moves that the Steelers had to make in order to sign these 2 players, the Steelers have waived injured wide receiver Tyreek Black and kind of placed him on the injured reserve list if he can translate back and clear waivers. You look at Black, and he was signed by the team during training camp. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's the moves that they made in correlation, and those are the players that they've picked up, and those are the transactions within the last week or so for this team. Just like Doss, these players are being signed super late into the offseason with only 2 more preseason games to go. But at least it's still the preseason, and usually the backups, the third team, play most of the game. So at least they're able to show out and see what they could do in the preseason. But still, they have basically no training camp to go through, and that's where you're around the coaches, and you could actually put your mark on them and put your mark on this team in practice every day. But because now there's basically no more training camp left, and it's basically just closed practices, they're going to have such a limited fashion to be able to put their mark on this team and have something put on film. So they better hurry up, catch up to speed, and show out during the preseason if they want to actually have a chance to make this roster. But more than likely, these are just camp bodies. These are just guys that play in the preseason, and maybe they make the practice squad, but who really knows at this stage. But with that being said, that's the end of this video. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on Doss first. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below about the offensive guard who weighs basically 380 pounds, 6'5", and is a massive, huge human being. Let me know your thoughts on him. Do you think he should make this team, or he could make this team, or you would want to see him on the practice squad? Or do you just think that he's a camp body? And also let me know your thoughts on the other players the Pittsburgh Steelers have signed as well within the last week or so. Those players at wide receiver and defensive back. So, also, with that being said, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, analysis, highlights, transactions, kind of introductions to new players, everything like that. I covered everything with the Steelers every training camp day with highlights and analysis are on the channel. Every new player we've gotten this offseason. If you want to catch up before the season actually starts, go ahead. It's on the channel. I'll continue covering the Steelers throughout the season as well. So turn on notifications, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all later. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.